The airport was alive with movement and noise, a constant hum of travelers rushing to catch flights, luggage wheels rolling across polished floors, announcements echoing overhead, and the occasional cry of a child. Everyone seemed to be in their own world, focused on schedules, phones, and check-in counters. Among the crowd, an elderly woman moved slowly, her eyes scanning the signs but clearly confused. She was carrying a small handbag and a worn-out travel bag that looked heavy for her age. Her hands moved in small, tentative gestures, trying to communicate with the airport staff who were too busy to notice. She was deaf, and the world around her seemed to operate at a speed she could not match. People walked past, some bumping into her slightly, others glancing briefly before hurrying on. She paused near a departure board, trying to read the letters and numbers, squinting at the screen, but the motion of the crowd made it difficult to focus. She held out her hand to a young staff member who walked by, and he just shook his head without stopping, saying something under his breath. She didn't understand the words, but she felt the rejection. At that moment, a single dad was making his way through the same crowded terminal. He had his toddler on one hip and a small backpack slung over his shoulder. He was trying to keep the child from grabbing the shiny display of snacks while also watching for his own gait. The toddler was chatty and curious, tugging at his hair and pointing at things. It was a juggling act that most people around him didn't even notice. But then he saw her. He noticed the slight tremble in her hands, the furrowed brow, the way she paused as if trying to figure out where to go next. Something inside him made him stop. He knelt slightly to get closer to her level, putting one hand gently on his child to keep him from wandering, and extended his other hand toward her in a welcoming gesture. She turned to look at him, her eyes full of uncertainty. He smiled softly and signed slowly and clearly, "Are you okay? Can I help you?" He didn't rush, didn't use complicated signs, just enough to show he was listening. Her eyes widened a little, a mix of relief and surprise crossing her face. She signed back, hesitating, unsure if he would understand. He nodded, encouraging her to continue. The staff member she had tried to speak to earlier had moved away, leaving her without any assistance. But now, finally, someone was paying attention. The single dad asked her where she needed to go, using simple gestures and pointing at signs around them. She responded with a mix of signs and pointing at herself, then at the exit. He understood that she was trying to find someone to pick her up. He smiled reassuringly and signed, "Let's go together." "I will help you." She returned the gesture, a small, thankful smile forming on her lips. He guided her gently, making sure the child stayed close and their bags didn't get in the way. Each step was careful, measured, and attentive to her pace. As they walked, he asked her through signs about her journey. She indicated she often traveled alone and that airports could be overwhelming. He nodded, understanding, and shared in signs that he knew it could feel confusing when people were too busy to notice. The toddler, noticing the attention his dad was giving, stayed quiet, sensing the importance of the moment. She pulled a small book from her handbag and held it close, showing that reading was a comfort to her while waiting. He nodded again, signing about books, showing that he appreciated her way of coping with the world around her. Around them, the airport continued at its usual pace. People brushed past without a second thought, luggage carts rattling, announcements blaring. Some travelers glanced curiously at the unusual pair, a man with a child assisting an elderly woman with such patience. Yet most kept moving, too occupied with their own concerns. The single dad, however, remained focused, treating the moment as if it was the only thing that mattered in that busy terminal. They found a quieter corner near a seating area. He helped her settle down on one of the benches, making sure she was comfortable. The child sat on his lap, watching with wide eyes, learning perhaps an early lesson in empathy and patience. He signed to her, asking if she needed water or anything else while they waited. She shook her head slightly but gestured that she felt safer now that he was there. Minutes passed and he noticed how her demeanor had shifted. The anxiety that had marked her face when he first approached had softened. Her eyes were no longer scanning desperately for someone to help. They were now focused on the conversation they shared, the simple exchange of signs, gestures, and understanding. He could feel the trust forming, a quiet bond created in the midst of chaos. As they waited, he asked her about her family, using simple signs to communicate. She indicated she had a son who would pick her up, and he signed back, showing excitement that they would soon be reunited. She made small, careful gestures, showing that she often felt isolated in such moments, but that today someone had noticed. He nodded, signing back encouragement and reassurance. Other travelers began to take notice. A few slowed their pace, curious about the interaction. Some even smiled as they walked by, recognizing the patience and care the single dad was showing. For the first time, the elderly woman felt that she was seen, that she was acknowledged beyond her disability. The world, which had seemed so rushed and uncaring, was now a little warmer, a little more human. He continued guiding her, checking in, making sure she knew the way to the pickup area. He didn't speak loudly or try to draw attention. He simply remained present, steady, and supportive. The child clung to his hip, observing silently, perhaps absorbing the lesson in kindness that was unfolding before him. The woman held her book close, occasionally gesturing to something she wanted to show, and he responded patiently, encouraging her engagement. Through it all, the airport remained bustling and loud, but for the three of them a small bubble of calm had formed. He wasn't thinking about recognition or reward. He was thinking only about the immediate need in front of him, helping someone who had been ignored for too long. Each gesture, each sign was a small act of compassion, a bridge built in the middle of an otherwise indifferent crowd. Hours, or maybe just minutes, passed, though it felt longer in the way moments of genuine connection always do. She laughed softly at something he signed, a soundless expression that lit up her face. He smiled back, feeling a quiet satisfaction that came from making a difference even in a small way. The child clapped his hands in delight, enjoying the warmth and laughter, unaware of the complexity of the emotions at play but sensing the safety and kindness surrounding him. Finally, he signed that it would not be long before her son arrived. Her eyes lit up and she nodded vigorously. Together they stood and began moving toward the pickup area. He stayed close, attentive to her pace and her needs, guiding her through the remaining sea of travelers. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about being present, being patient, and treating someone with dignity. In the middle of the airport chaos, that simple act of human attention was a quiet revolution. And in that moment, with the toddler holding his hand and the elderly woman smiling with relief, the single dad realized something profound. The world could be rushed, noisy, and indifferent, but small gestures, patience, attention, kindness, had the power to create calm, to create trust, and to remind people of their shared humanity. He didn't need thanks, didn't need recognition. The relief in her eyes and the small smile were enough. In a world where everyone else had ignored her, he had stopped, noticed, and helped. And that was all that mattered. They found a quieter corner in the airport where the crowd's noise softened and the announcements became less overwhelming. The single dad helped the elderly woman sit down on a bench, making sure she was comfortable and that her bags were within reach. His toddler stayed close, clinging to his side, curious about the gentle interaction unfolding before him. The woman seemed to relax slightly, the tension leaving her shoulders as she realized she was no longer alone in a confusing place. He signed to her, asking simple questions about her day, her travel plans, and how she was feeling. She responded carefully, signing slowly as if unsure if he would understand. He nodded encouragingly, smiling and repeating signs when needed, making sure communication was clear. It was a patient exchange, one that required focus and care in a world that often moves too fast for understanding. Through gestures, she explained that she was trying to meet her son, who often picked her up from the airport. Sometimes she traveled alone, and airports could feel overwhelming, especially when staff were busy or inattentive. He signed back reassuringly, letting her know that it was okay and that he would stay until she was safely reunited with her son. She nodded, relief evident on her face, and gestured thanks. As they continued their conversation, he noticed how her expressions became warmer, how her eyes sparkled with recognition that someone genuinely cared. She pointed to her book and he signed back about reading, asking what she liked most. She showed him the cover and began signing the story's title, using gestures to indicate her favorite characters. He responded with interest, asking questions about the plot and the characters. Each sign exchanged was a bridge, connecting two people from very different walks of life through understanding and empathy. Meanwhile, the airport around them continued in its usual rhythm. Travelers rushed by, some glancing curiously at the pair, others completely absorbed in their own plans. A few people slowed their pace, intrigued by the unusual sight of a single dad patiently communicating with an elderly woman through sign language. Others, however, kept moving, their attention fully occupied with screens, tickets, and the rush of boarding gates. He didn't mind. His focus remained on the woman in front of him, understanding that small acts of kindness often go unnoticed by the rest of the world. He signed again, asking about her family, her hobbies, and what made her happy. She responded with careful gestures, indicating that her son was a source of pride and that she loved reading, traveling, and experiencing new places, even if they sometimes felt intimidating. The toddler, observing quietly, occasionally reached out to touch the woman's bag or wave at her, prompting a soft smile from her. She gestured back, showing appreciation for his innocence and warmth. The man nodded and signed that children have a way of seeing the world with openness and trust, something she seemed to respond to with a nod of agreement. Time passed slowly in that corner of the airport, but it was filled with meaningful exchanges. The single dad learned about her past travels, the challenges she faced navigating noisy, crowded spaces, and the courage it took to do so alone. She shared stories of family gatherings, favorite books, and little moments that brought her joy. He listened attentively, signing in response, asking gentle questions that encouraged her to continue. At one point, she paused, looking around at the busy terminal, and signed that many people ignored her, that sometimes she felt invisible. He nodded, signing empathy and understanding, letting her know that her presence mattered, that she deserved attention and respect. It was a simple message, but one that seemed to touch her deeply. Her eyes glistened slightly, and she held her hands over her chest, a silent gesture of gratitude. He suggested they move toward a quieter path to the pickup area, but only when she felt ready. She agreed, and together they stood, the toddler holding his hand securely. He guided her gently, ensuring she had support with every step. Along the way, he pointed to signs, indicated directions, and signed reminders, making sure she felt confident navigating the terminal. Each movement, each gesture was deliberate, a careful combination of guidance and respect for her independence. Other travelers began to take notice more clearly now. A few offered brief smiles, some asked if she needed help, and a few nodded approvingly at the patient interaction. The single dad remained focused, responding to her needs, not seeking attention or recognition. He was simply present, offering calm and guidance amidst the constant rush of travelers. It was a quiet demonstration of empathy, an example of how small actions can profoundly impact someone's day. She gestured occasionally to her watch and her ticket, showing concern about the timing of her pickup. He signed reassuringly that there was still time and that they were on the right track. Her initial anxiety had transformed into calm trust, and she walked more confidently, following his lead. The child, watching closely, began to understand the importance of slowing down, being patient, and helping others, lessons learned through observation rather than words. As they approached the designated area for pickups, she stopped briefly to adjust her bag and catch her breath. He signed that they were almost there, and she smiled, expressing her thanks through a series of gestures filled with warmth and relief. It was a silent conversation, yet full of emotion and human connection. The single dad responded with a gentle nod and smile, reassuring her that it was his pleasure to help. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a few staff members and travelers pausing, watching the careful interaction. Their curiosity seemed to transform into quiet admiration as they witnessed the respect, patience, and empathy displayed in the simple act of helping someone in need. The woman's confidence had grown visibly, her posture straighter, her gestures more assured. She was no longer invisible in the bustling terminal. She was seen and respected. Finally, a young man in a sharp suit hurried toward them, scanning the crowd with urgency. She immediately recognized him and gestured excitedly, signing quickly in her language. He smiled broadly, running to her side, and she gestured toward the single dad, communicating thanks through signs. The man extended his hand, and the single dad shook it, smiling humbly, not seeking recognition but acknowledging the gratitude. The woman's son introduced himself, and the elderly woman signed warmly, expressing her relief and happiness. The single dad responded with a polite nod, signing that he was happy to have helped. The toddler clapped his hands, sensing the joyful energy in the reunion. It was a moment of pure human connection, born out of patience, empathy, and attention to someone in need. The young man, now aware of how much help the single dad had given his mother, thanked him sincerely, expressing that such patience and understanding were rare. The single dad signed back humbly, indicating that it had been a simple act just helping someone who needed it. The mother smiled, her hands moving gracefully as she expressed gratitude, her eyes full of warmth and relief. It was clear that this brief encounter had created a lasting impact, not just for her but for everyone involved. As the young man guided his mother toward the car, the single dad watched, a sense of quiet fulfillment washing over him. He hadn't acted for recognition or reward. He had acted because it was the right thing to do. The airport, which had seemed overwhelming and indifferent, had become a place where human kindness could shine, even for a brief moment. He held his toddler close, signing softly to him about the importance of helping others and noticing those who are overlooked. The elderly woman turned back once before leaving, giving a final gesture of thanks, and he waved, signing good wishes for safe travels. She smiled warmly, and for the first time in what felt like hours, she felt truly seen and supported. The single dad and his child continued toward their own gate, carrying with them a quiet sense of accomplishment and a reminder that small acts of empathy can ripple outward in unexpected ways. Even as the terminal buzzed with people hurrying past, the impact of the interaction lingered. Travelers who had noticed paused to reflect on the patience and kindness displayed. Staff members exchanged brief words about what they had witnessed. And for the single dad, the lesson was clear. Taking the time to truly see someone, to listen, and to offer genuine help can transform moments of fear or confusion into moments of trust, understanding, and connection. He thought about how many people go through life unnoticed, their struggles unseen, how simple gestures, kneeling to meet someone at eye level using patience and clear communication, offering guidance without judgment, could make the world feel more humane. Today, in a crowded airport, he had learned the quiet power of empathy, and he hoped that others who witnessed the moment might carry that understanding forward in their own lives. He held his child's hand tightly, a small reminder that kindness can be taught not just by words but by action, and with that, they walked on, leaving behind a corner of the airport where a deaf woman had felt acknowledged, supported, and truly seen. The terminal was still busy, people hurrying to gates, families meeting, travelers checking phones and luggage, announcements echoing through the air. But in one quiet corner, the single dad and the elderly woman continued their slow, careful journey. Every step was deliberate. He noticed her hesitation when stepping over the cracks in the floor tiles and adjusted his pace to match hers, offering steady guidance and a reassuring smile. The toddler stayed close, occasionally glancing up at her, sensing the significance of the moment through the calm energy of his father. The woman gestured toward the seating area ahead, signing questions about the gates and where her son might be. He nodded, replying with clear, gentle signs, explaining that they were approaching the area where pickups usually happened. She relaxed a little, her hands moving more freely as she communicated. She explained that airports could be overwhelming, that sometimes she felt lost even in familiar surroundings. He listened carefully, nodding and responding with empathy, making her feel understood. Around them, the airport continued its usual rush. Some travelers slowed for a moment, curious about the unusual interaction. Others seemed oblivious, moving past without noticing. A young woman glanced their way, saw the gentle exchange of signs, and smiled before hurrying along. A man with luggage paused, then shrugged and moved on. It was a mix of indifference and subtle recognition from the crowd. But the single dad didn't seek attention. He focused solely on the woman, ensuring she felt safe and guided. They stopped near a quiet area, away from the main flow of passengers. He signed to her, asking if she wanted some water or a place to rest for a moment. She shook her head gently, indicating that she was fine, but her hands moved in small gestures expressing gratitude. He smiled, signing back that he was happy to help. The toddler clapped softly, enjoying the small smiles and gestures exchanged between them. The woman looked at the child and gestured softly toward him, her eyes full of warmth, and he nodded, signing that children can bring joy and comfort even in busy, stressful places. The single dad asked her about her son. Using simple signs to understand more about him, she indicated that he often picked her up from airports, that he was busy but always made time for her. She signed that she worried sometimes about being alone or misunderstood. He nodded, signing reassurance, letting her know that today she had not been alone. She smiled, a silent, heartfelt smile that spoke volumes of relief and trust. As they moved forward, he pointed out signs and directions, signing explanations. She nodded and followed, her confidence growing with each step. She gestured that she liked observing people, and that she often found beauty in simple things around her. He responded, signing about noticing details and moments, encouraging her to look at the world around her with curiosity rather than anxiety. Her eyes brightened and she gestured in agreement, showing that the conversation brought comfort and ease. Other travelers began to notice more clearly. A few paused, watching as he helped her navigate the busy terminal. Some smiled, impressed by the patience and care displayed. A mother with a young child whispered to her own kid, pointing toward the duo, and the child waved. These small observations of kindness rippled quietly through the terminal, unnoticed by most but powerful for those who saw. The single dad remained focused, responding to the woman's needs, not for recognition but because it felt right. She gestured toward her watch and ticket, signing concern about timing. He reassured her through signs, indicating that they had plenty of time and that her son would arrive soon. Her body relaxed further, her movements more fluid. She gestured about her favorite books and he responded with curiosity, asking questions about the stories and the characters she liked. It became a quiet, comforting exchange, a shared human moment amid the rush of travelers around them. The toddler occasionally tugged at his father, pointing at signs or objects, and he smiled, signing brief explanations to both the child and the woman, integrating them into a gentle rhythm of conversation. The woman's eyes reflected gratitude and she gestured softly, showing that she felt supported, acknowledged, and respected. Every interaction, every sign, created a bridge between their lives, even in the middle of a busy airport. As they approached the pickup area, a young man in a sharp suit came into view, scanning the crowd urgently. She recognized him immediately and signed with excitement. The single dad stepped back slightly, allowing the reunion to unfold. She reached out, signing and gesturing toward him, and the young man smiled broadly. He was her son. He looked relieved to see her safe and calm, and he expressed gratitude through words, though she responded in sign language with joy and warmth. The single dad remained quietly observant, his presence steady, but unobtrusive. The young man thanked him sincerely, acknowledging the patience, empathy, and guidance he had provided. The dad signed back humbly, saying it was only natural to help someone in need. The woman gestured a final heartfelt thank you, her hands moving gracefully as she expressed deep appreciation. Her son nodded in agreement, showing that he recognized the kindness extended to his mother. The three adults exchanged a few words and signs, creating a small circle of human connection. The toddler clapped softly, enjoying the warm energy radiating from the reunion. The single dad smiled gently, signing to the child about the importance of kindness, patience, and noticing others who may need help. The lesson was subtle but powerful, teaching the child through experience rather than instruction. As the mother and son prepared to leave, she turned back one last time, giving a final gesture of thanks. He waved and signed back, wishing them safe travels. The young man guided his mother toward the waiting car, and she held her book closely, smiling and relieved. The single dad and his child continued walking toward their own gate, the feeling of fulfillment lingering quietly. It was not a grand act, but it was meaningful, leaving an impression on everyone involved. The terminal carried on, travelers rushing past, staff moving efficiently, announcements echoing overhead. Yet in that corner, a story of empathy, patience, and human connection had unfolded. The single dad reflected on the moment, realizing that noticing someone in need and offering steady support could transform anxiety and fear into trust and comfort. Even in a world moving too fast for most to see, small acts of kindness could ripple outward, affecting others in ways that were subtle yet profound. He thought about the woman, how her confidence had grown, how her fear and hesitation had been replaced by calm and trust. He looked at his child, understanding that this moment would teach an important lesson about humanity. Simple gestures, patience, and attention mattered. It wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about making someone feel seen and supported. In the midst of the busy airport, a quiet transformation had taken place, proving that human empathy could shine even in the most chaotic environments. The single dad walked on, holding his child's hand, carrying the quiet satisfaction of having made a difference. He knew that the world often ignored those in need, but he had stopped, noticed, and acted. That was all that mattered. As he looked around at the bustling travelers, he realized that moments like these were rare but powerful. A reminder that patience, understanding, and care could create connections that lingered long after people parted ways. And in that knowledge, he found a deep sense of fulfillment, a quiet joy that came from simply doing the right thing. The airport terminal was still full of movement, people hurrying to gates, families meeting, announcements echoing across the hall. But for the single dad and the elderly woman, a quiet space seemed to exist around them. Every step toward the pickup area was careful, gentle, and deliberate. He made sure her pace matched hers, checking if she needed support, occasionally signing questions to see if she was okay. She nodded, feeling more confident with every passing moment. Her hands moved freely now, and her eyes showed relief and a growing sense of comfort. As they moved, he encouraged her to talk about her life, her travels, and her interests. She signed slowly, explaining her love for reading and the joy of small adventures. He nodded, signing back, asking questions about the stories she liked and the experiences that brought her happiness. Each exchange was simple but meaningful, connecting them in a way that words alone could not achieve. The toddler followed quietly, absorbing the gentle energy, occasionally reaching out toward the woman with curiosity and warmth. She smiled at him, gesturing softly, and he waved back, showing that even small interactions could carry joy. The surrounding travelers began to notice the patient, careful interaction. Some slowed their steps, watching with quiet admiration. A few smiled, recognizing the kindness being shown, but the single dad remained focused on the woman, guiding her, signing reassuring messages and creating a safe path through the busy terminal. She gestured toward her watch and ticket, showing slight concern about time, and he signed back calmly, explaining that her son would arrive soon and there was no need to worry. When they reached a less crowded corridor, he suggested they pause for a moment to rest. She gestured agreement, settling onto a bench with her small travel bag beside her. He knelt to her level, signing questions about her comfort and well-being. She smiled, showing gratitude through her signs. He signed gently, explaining that he was happy to help and that it was important she felt safe and supported. The toddler watched closely, learning the silent but powerful lesson of empathy and attention to others' needs. While waiting, she gestured about her son, asking when he might arrive. He signed encouragement, explaining that they were very close and that she had nothing to worry about. She responded with a series of gestures, her eyes brightening, showing relief and trust. She gestured to her book, explaining that it was her comfort during waiting times, and he responded with interest, signing questions about the story. They shared a quiet, meaningful conversation through gestures, words unspoken but deeply understood. Suddenly, a young man in a sharp suit appeared, scanning the crowd with urgency. She recognized him immediately and signed with excitement, her hands moving quickly as she pointed him out. The single dad stepped back respectfully, allowing the reunion to unfold naturally. The young man rushed toward her, smiling broadly. She signed quickly, expressing joy and gratitude, and he smiled, taking her hands in his. It was clear that he had been concerned for her well-being and was relieved to see her calm and safe. The single dad observed quietly, staying in the background, his presence steady but unobtrusive. The young man turned to him, offering thanks for helping his mother. The dad signed back humbly, explaining that he was happy to help and that it had been the right thing to do. The mother gestured warmly, her hands moving gracefully, showing deep appreciation. The toddler clapped softly, sensing the joy in the moment, the warmth of human connection that went beyond words. The young man and his mother exchanged a few quick words and gestures, ensuring that she was ready to leave. He guided her toward the waiting car while she held her small book close, smiling and relieved. The single dad and his child remained behind for a moment, watching them go. There was a quiet satisfaction in knowing that a simple act of attention and empathy had changed the course of someone's day. He held his child's hand, signing gently about the importance of noticing others, offering help, and practicing patience. As the mother and son walked toward the car, she turned back once, signing a final thank you. The single dad waved and signed back, wishing them safe travels. The young man nodded, his expression conveying gratitude and respect. The toddler clapped again, delighted by the positive energy surrounding them. The moment was simple but profound. a small demonstration of human kindness and understanding in a busy, indifferent world. The terminal continued its usual activity, travelers rushing past, announcements echoing, luggage wheels rolling across the floors. But in that corner, a story of quiet patience, empathy, and human connection had taken place. The single dad reflected on the significance of the moment. Even though many people ignored the woman, he had taken the time to stop, listen, and guide her. He realized that simple acts of attention could create lasting impressions and build trust, even in brief encounters. He looked down at his child, understanding that this experience had already taught a lesson about empathy and compassion. Small gestures of kindness, patience in guiding someone, and giving attention to those often overlooked were powerful lessons in humanity. It wasn't about reward or recognition. It was about making someone feel seen, safe, and respected. Today, in a crowded airport, he had witnessed and participated in a transformation from anxiety to trust, from fear to comfort. As they continued toward their own gate, he noticed some travelers watching the interaction and whispering quietly, perhaps reflecting on what they had seen. The ripple effect of empathy was subtle but present. He held his child's hand firmly, sharing a quiet smile, and signed gently about how noticing someone in need, taking the time to help, and offering reassurance could make a big difference. It was a lesson lived, not taught through words alone, but through action and presence. The single dad's thoughts lingered on the elderly woman, how her fear and hesitation had been replaced by calm and confidence, how her son's arrival, combined with the quiet guidance and attention he had offered, created a moment of human connection that would likely be remembered. It reinforced the importance of slowing down, observing, and offering help whenever possible. In the midst of the bustling airport, kindness and empathy had shone through, quietly but powerfully. He reflected on the contrast between those who rushed past, absorbed in their own world, and the transformative impact of even small gestures. It was a reminder that anyone could make a difference, no matter how ordinary the moment seemed. The world might be busy, loud, and indifferent, but the choice to be patient, compassionate, and attentive could ripple outward, affecting lives in ways unseen but deeply felt. The toddler, sensing the gentle satisfaction radiating from his father, looked up and smiled. The single dad returned the smile, signing softly about the importance of noticing others, offering help, and practicing patience and kindness. He felt a quiet pride in the lessons being shared without words, a bond forming through shared experiences, empathy, and the simple act of being present. As they moved forward, the terminal still buzzing around them, he carried with him a sense of fulfillment and a renewed belief in human goodness. He knew that the elderly woman would continue her journey with confidence, comforted by the assistance and attention she had received. Her son, aware of the support given, would likely remember the kindness as well, and he too would carry the quiet satisfaction of having made a meaningful difference in someone's day. It was a simple story of empathy, patience, and attention, unfolding quietly in the chaos of an airport. The single dad understood that moments like these, though small, could transform fear into trust, isolation into connection, and anxiety into calm. In a world where so many are overlooked, his actions were a reminder of the quiet power of noticing someone, offering help, and creating human connection. And with that understanding, he walked on, holding his child's hand, leaving behind a small ripple of kindness that would linger long after they had gone. The airport was still busy, people moving quickly, announcements echoing overhead, travelers hurrying to gates. But the single dad and his toddler moved at their own pace, carrying with them a quiet sense of fulfillment. The elderly woman and her son had left, but the impact of the interaction lingered in the man's mind. He thought about how a few minutes of patience and attention had turned fear and anxiety into comfort and trust. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that small acts of kindness could make a lasting difference. As they walked toward their own gate, he reflected on the woman's story, the challenges she faced as a deaf traveler, and how often people overlooked her. He realized how easy it is to ignore someone who seems different or who struggles to communicate. But he also saw how powerful it could be to stop, notice, and help. Each gesture, each sign, each moment of patience had created a connection that went beyond words. He signed softly to his child about the importance of noticing others and offering help whenever possible. The toddler listened, looking up with wide eyes, learning a lesson in empathy and patience without even realizing it. He pointed at travelers rushing by and asked questions in his small, curious voice. The single dad smiled, signing responses using simple gestures to explain that sometimes people need help, and that paying attention to them can make a big difference. It was a lesson not taught through books but through experience, something the child would carry with him for years to come. He remembered the woman's eyes, how they had lit up when she realized someone was truly listening to her, guiding her and offering support. The small smile she gave, the gestures of gratitude, all made a lasting impression. He realized that it wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about doing what was right in the moment, about treating someone with respect, patience, and care. In a world that often moves too fast to notice others, these small actions could ripple outward, creating quiet but meaningful change. The terminal buzzed with activity around them, but he noticed how different his perception had become. He saw more travelers helping each other, noticed small gestures of kindness that went previously unnoticed. The ripple effect of empathy, even if indirect, was powerful. He hoped that people who observed the interaction with the elderly woman might carry that example forward in their own lives, realizing that patience, attention, and compassion were always available if chosen. The child tugged at his hand, pointing at a display of colorful signs and objects. The father smiled and signed back, explaining the importance of observing the world and noticing both the small details and the needs of others. The toddler laughed, clapping his hands, enjoying the interaction and the simple joy of learning through shared experience. He realized that these moments, though quiet, were shaping values and understanding in the young child, planting seeds of empathy that could grow over a lifetime. He reflected on the mother and son, thinking about the impact of small acts of kindness, how a brief moment of patience, clear communication, and gentle guidance had transformed a potentially stressful situation into a meaningful, positive experience. The mother had felt safe, her son had felt grateful, and he had experienced a quiet fulfillment that comes from doing something good for someone else. It was a reminder that acts of kindness don't need to be grand to be powerful. As they moved past the boarding gates, he thought about how often people go through life unnoticed, their struggles unseen. How easy it is to walk by someone in need, wrapped up in our own lives. But he knew that even a few minutes of attention could change someone's day, or even their perspective. It was a responsibility and a privilege to notice, to act with patience, and to connect in meaningful ways, no matter how brief the encounter. The toddler looked up at him again, pointing at a family helping a lost child find their gate. The father signed to the toddler, explaining that helping others was a way of sharing kindness, of making the world a better place. The child's eyes widened, understanding in his own small way. The father smiled, feeling that the lessons of empathy, attention, and patience were being passed on quietly, naturally, through lived experience rather than words alone. As they reached their gate, he looked back one last time at the terminal, reflecting on the day's events. He felt grateful for the opportunity to help, for the trust given by the elderly woman, and for the subtle lessons learned through patience and empathy. He realized that human connection is not about titles, recognition, or social status. It is about noticing someone in need, taking the time to offer support, and acting with compassion. That is what truly makes a difference. He thought about how the mother might carry this experience forward, sharing her story with her son, remembering that not everyone ignores those who struggle. The memory of someone stopping, kneeling to meet her level, guiding her carefully, and communicating with patience would stay with her. It would remind her of the power of empathy, of kindness, and of quiet human connection in a noisy, indifferent world. The single dad looked at his child, feeling a quiet pride. This experience had shown the importance of living with empathy and attention, of treating people with care and respect. He hoped that his child would remember this moment, understanding that even small actions can have a big impact. That is the way kindness spreads, quietly, gently, but powerfully. As the boarding announcement echoed for their flight, he took a deep breath, feeling content. The day had not been about recognition or reward. It had been about noticing someone in need, offering help, and creating a meaningful connection. That is what mattered most. The airport, once just a place of hustle and noise, had become a space of human connection, empathy, and learning. He held the toddler's hand as they walked onto the plane, carrying with them the quiet satisfaction of knowing that a small act of kindness had made a difference. The lessons of empathy, attention, and patience would linger, shaping values and understanding in ways both immediate and long-lasting. And in that knowledge he found a sense of peace and fulfillment, knowing that the world can change, one small act at a time, when someone chooses to see, notice, and care.